At 65, Johnny Whitaker finally tells the truth about Brian Keith. Johnny Whitaker was born John Orson Whitaker Jr.B. on December 13, 1959 in Venice, California. From when he was really little, Johnny had a special something that made him different. Not just as someone who performed, but as a young boy who could make viewers feel real emotions in a way that seemed pure and real. His acting was filled with warmth, honesty, and sweetness. These are the things that made his career special and made him famous before he even became a teenager. Whitaker started in show business very early. When he was only 3 years old, he was already showing up in television comical, quickly getting noticed for how natural he seemed and how expressive his face was. These early TV spots opened the door for what would become an amazing acting career. In 1966, his big chance came when he was picked to play Jody Davis in the popular CBS sitcom Family Affair, acting alongside Brian Keith and Sebastian Cabot. Johnny played a younger fan who, along with his twin sister Buffy, played by Anissa Jones, came to live with their uncle, Bill. The show became a huge hit and stayed on TV for 5 seasons from 1966 to 1971. Johnny's acting as Jody won the hearts of millions of viewers who connected with his gentle vulnerability and honest way of showing childhood innocence even when dealing with loss and change. As Family Affair kept getting more and more popular, Whitaker's fame grew like crazy. He became one of the most well-known young stars in Hollywood. People admired him for being professional and being able to handle emotionally tough roles with the maturity of a grown-up actor. His close friendship with his co-stars, especially Brian Keith, came through beautifully on screen, creating a believable feeling of family that touched audiences in a deep way off camera. Keith became like a forever.Johnny, a connection that would have a big impact on him in the years to come. After Family Affair ended, Whitaker successfully moved on to movie roles, something that many child stars had a hard time doing. In 1972, he got lots of praise for his performance in Biscuit Eater, a sweet story about a boy and his faithful dog, showing his ability to carry a film with real emotional depth. That same year, he also starred as the mischievous but lovable Tom Sawyer in Tom Sawyer 1973, made by Reader's Digest and featuring music by Sherman Brothers. His acting as the adventurous boy from Mark Twain's classic book was highly praised and remains one of the most memorable movie versions of the character. In 2012, Johnny Whitaker came back into the public eye in a surprising and creative way when he helped produce and co-hosted a short-lived but memorable radio talk show called The Dr. Zod and Johnny Show. The series gave Whitaker a way to connect with audiences in a completely new style, mixing humor, honest conversation, and heartfelt thinking. Fans who listened often talked about his natural charm on the radio, his quick sense of humor, and the thoughtful ideas shared about life in and out of show business. Even though the show only ran for a short time, it became a nostalgic treasure for longtime fans who enjoyed hearing the former child star talk with maturity, humor, and honesty about his journey through Hollywood and beyond. The next year in 2013, Whitaker took another artistic leap, this time on the stage. He appeared in the Judson Theater Company's professional production of To Kill a Mockingbird, the timeless American classic based on Harper Lee's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel. Whitaker's performance as Judge Taylor, even though it was a small role, had a quiet seriousness that showed off his experienced acting skills and his respect for literary drama. Audiences were touched by his presence, and critics pointed out how his calm authority and expressive delivery brought realness to the courtroom scenes. For Whitaker, the role meant a meaningful return to live theater, a place that let him reconnect with the pure craft of acting that first got him interested in entertainment as a child. Then in 2016, Whitaker made fans of Elijah's happy with a nostalgic guest appearance in Amazon's reboot of Sigmund and the Sea Monsters, a beloved series that had first made him famous in the 1970s. Showing up in the first episode, he played the role of Zach, a grumpy yet funny boat owner who trades jokes with David Arquette's salty sailor character, Captain Barnabas. The appearance was more than just a fun guest spot. It was a heartfelt nod to the original show and to Whitaker's roots in children's television, adding to the feeling of reunion and celebration. The episode also featured guest appearances by Sid and Marty Krofft, the legendary creators of the original series. For both longtime fans and new viewers, Whitaker's return to the world of Sigmund and the Sea Monsters was a calming reminder of his lasting connection to a generation of Saturday morning television magic. Through his different projects, radio, stage, and screen, Johnny Whitaker proved that his love for storytelling had never faded. Each appearance showed a different side of his talent, from his comedic timing warmth to his dramatic depth and nostalgic appeal. Decades after first winning hearts as a child actor, Whitaker kept growing and changing, showing that his creative spirit and dedication to entertaining audiences are as strong as ever. Johnny Whitaker's marriage to Cimbria Wright was a short but important chapter in the actor's complicated personality. The two got married in 1984 during a time when Johnny was trying to find his way through the often bumpy transition from child stardom to adult life. By that time, Whitaker was already well known for his unforgettable roles in Family Affair, Tom Sawyer, and Sigmund and the Sea Monsters. However, behind the smiling boy next door image that had made him famous, he was struggling to find a new sense of who he was and what his purpose was beyond the Hollywood spotlight. His marriage to Cimbria Wright came at a time when he was looking for stability, companionship, and maybe a sense of normal life after years spent in the demanding world of show business. Cimbria Wright was not part of the entertainment industry, and that difference may have been appealing to Johnny at first, who had grown tired of pressures of fame and the fakeness that often came with it. Their marriage represented a hopeful try at making his life more stable and finding real connection away from the public eye. The couple shared moments of happiness and made plans for a future together. But like many young marriages, especially those affected by the difficulties of Hollywood, it soon ran into problems. Johnny was dealing with personal struggles, including growing disappointment with the entertainment industry, and would later face problems with substance abuse that deeply affected his life and relationships. These difficulties probably put a heavy burden on the marriage as emotional distance and different priorities began to hurt them. By 1988, after 4 years of marriage, Johnny Whitaker and Cimbria Wright decided to separate and finalize their divorce. The breakup marked a painful time in Johnny's life, but it also worked as a turning point. The end of their marriage pushed him to face his own personal problems and rethink the direction of his life, though very little has been publicly shared about Cimbria Wright herself, and she stayed mostly private after the divorce. The experience really shaped Johnny's understanding of relationships, toughness, and self-worth. In later interviews, Whitaker spoke openly about the hard times he faced during and after the marriage, thinking about how losing that partnership was one of several wake-up calls that eventually led him to rebuild his life. After their divorce, Johnny entered one of the most difficult times of his life, a period when he battled addiction and drifted away from the acting career that defined his youth. Yet out of that darkness came an amazing transformation. Years later, he came out sober and spiritually renewed, dedicating himself to helping others who were fighting similar battles. In that way, his short-lived marriage to Cimbria Wright can be seen as a chapter that, while painful, played a really important role in his long journey toward healing and personal growth. For decades, fans of beloved 1960-second sitcom Family Affair have held a special place in their hearts for the touching relationship between young Jody Davis and high-screen Uncle Bill Davis, played by veteran actor Brian Keith. Now at age 65, Johnny Whitaker, the child star who played Jody, has decided to open up in more detail about what it was really like working alongside Keith, a man who became far more than just a co-star to him. Brian Keith wasn't just an actor on set, Whitaker revealed. He was like a second father to me, someone who took the time to teach me, guide me, and protect me from the pressures of Hollywood when I was just a little kid trying to make sense of it all. His words show the deep emotional bond between the two, one that went way beyond the cameras and the carefully written scripts. Whitaker explained that as a young boy of barely 7 when Family Affair began, he was thrown into a world filled with adults, long working hours, and intense expectations. In the middle of all that, Brian Keith stood out as a steady presence. He was tough, but he had this soft heart. Whitaker said he didn't talk much about feelings, but you could feel they genuinely cared. Keith, known for his gruff way of acting and manly presence, took the time to joke with the children between takes and even helped them understand the meaning in their lines. He would say, "Don't just say the words, Johnny. Believe them." That stuck with me my whole life, But Whitaker also admitted that his relationship with Keith wasn't always easy. He could be scary. Whitaker said had that voice that could shake you, and when he got upset, everyone knew to stay out of his way. But I never doubted that he loved us. He was just a man walker, a lot of weight inside. Whitaker's voice turned sad when he thought back on the struggles that Keith faced later in life, including personal tragedies and getting sicker. I think people forget that even strong men like Brian can be broken inside, he said quietly. He had seen and been through stomach, and sometimes that pain would come through in ways people didn't understand. When Family Affair ended in 1971, Whitaker was just a teenager, still trying to figure out who he was outside of his child star image. Brian stayed in touch with me for a while. Whitaker revealed he would call and ask how I was doing, especially when he heard I was struggling. But Hollywood can pull people apart. We both had our own paths to walk. Years later, when Whitaker learned of Keith's tragic death in 1997, he was heartbroken. I remember crying like a kid again, he said. It broke my heart because I knew how much pain he must have been in. He wasn't just my uncle. He was family to me. Whitaker went on to share how much he still carries Keith's lessons with him today. He taught me what real professionalism looked like. He said, he showed me that acting wasn't just about fame. It was about truth. Brian had this way of making every scenario like it wasn't acting at all. He'd say, Johnny, if you don't feel it, the audience won't feel it either. That advice has stuck with me for over 50 years. In thinking back on Keith's influence, Whitaker stressed how rare it was to find someone in Hollywood who genuinely cared for the well-being of a child actor. There were a lot of adults who saw kids like me as props, he explained. But Brian never did. He saw him as a person. He looked out for me, and I think that's one of the reasons I was able to survive the business when so many child stars didn't. Whitaker has talked in the past about his own battles with addiction and depression after his fame faded. But he gives credit to mentors like Keith for planting the seeds of strength in him. Whenever I was down, I'd think about Brian's strength, he said. He was the kind of man who faced his demons with courage, and that inspired me to keep going. Today, Whitaker looks back on Family Affair with deep thankfulness, not just for the success it brought him, but for relationships that shaped his life. I don't think I ever really told Brian how much he meant to me, he admitted. If I could, I'd tell him that he changed my life. He made me believe in myself, and that's something no fame or fortune could ever replace. Johnny Whitaker's heartfelt thoughts rend fans that behind the smiles and laughter of television's golden age were all human connections. Some tender, some complicated, but all deeply meaningful. Brian Keith was my hero, Whitaker wrapped up. And now looking back at 65, I finally understand that he wasn't just playing a role. He was showing me every single day what a real man and a real father figure should be. Today, Johnny Whitaker honors Brian Keith not only as a co-star, but as a deep influence who helped shape the person he became. Brian was complicated, he concluded. He had his demons, but he also had tremendous love and integrity. He didn't always say it, but he showed it in the way he worked, the way he treated Tedbull, and the way he carried himself. Whitaker hopes that by finally telling his truth about Brian Keith, fans will remember the man not just for his roles in television, but for the quiet depth and humanity behind them.